everybody. Welcome to the History of Everything. The History of Everything. Today's video, I'm going to give you a book review on The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain. This is a classic book. Here, I'll just show it to you right there. You can see the cover. It's a very classic book, and it's like just a modern. Well, it's a classic. It was written over 100 years ago, and it's cool that you can still get a copy. You can, I believe they're available on Amazon, eBay, maybe like a thrift books website, but I think I got mine on Amazon. So yeah, so this Mark Twain, the author, was born in 1835, November 30th, 1835, and this book was published June of 1876. So Mark Twain, he published it after the Civil War, but the book was published after the Civil War, but it was supposed to take place in Missouri in the 1840s or 50s, like before the Civil War, when they still had slavery. And yeah, so there is some racist language in there, but it's Tom's Mark Twain is not. He is not racist. He was just trying to be historically accurate. That's what they call it, is when there is like a time period and he wants to be accurate, so he put those words in there, and now it's really bad. And so yeah, and there's also another thing. They call this Native American Injun Joe. That's a really bad word, like how they used to call Native Americans Indians, but this is a worse word. So if I say Injun Joe, no, I'm not racist, and the book is not racist, or Mark Twain is not the book. But he was just trying to be historically accurate, and yeah. So, the very first scene in Tom Sawyer is when Tom has to whitewash the fence. That's like the first few chapters. Tom doesn't want to. If you don't know, whitewashing the fence didn't mean actually going out and like spraying it. It meant painting the fence. It was getting like old, and it was a wooden fence back then. So he doesn't want to, and he convinces some of his friends. He's like, "Hey guys, do you guys want to whitewash this fence for me?" He's like, "It's so fun. Like, this is not even work. It's play." And they're like, "Yeah, you're right." So he got like tons of his friends whitewashing his fence for him, while he got rich with junk, and they were paying him with like toys, candy, not real, maybe some money, like a little bit, but like toys, candy, maybe like a few cents or something. But he got rich with junk. Um, Now Aunt Polly, uh, his mom and dad died, so he's being raised by Aunt Polly. Aunt Polly's like, "Wow, nice job," and she gives him an apple. An apple was like a treat back then. I know there's like lots at the grocery store today, but so the main characters of the book are Becky, Tom, Sid. Sid is Tom's stepbrother. Huckleberry Finn, known as Huck. Joe's kind of like a side character. There's also like Judge Thatcher, who is Becky's dad, and Miss Thatcher, she's Becky's mom, and Miss Harper, that's Joe's mom, and Aunt Polly and Mary. Mary's kind of like, she helps out Aunt Polly. So yeah, those are all like the basically main characters. Of course, they have different main characters like Injun Joe, and how they just have adventures. So that's the first scene, and the next scene is Tom, Huck. Well, when I say scene, it's not really a movie. I'm just saying the big events that happen. The next big thing that happens is Tom, Huck, and Joe decide that they want to go be off and be pirates, and they don't want to like go to school really. So they go off and they paddle to this island off the coast. Well, it's not really a coast, I say. Sorry. It's not a coast. They lived in Missouri, so it was off of the Mississippi River. There was a little island in it. And so they go there and they're like, "This is great. We don't have to wear shoes," because they didn't really like like wearing nice clothes. They're just like ragtags. So they were like caught fish and made like bacon and stuff, and they just like were exploring for lost treasure on the island. And then Joe starts missing his mom, and Huck is kind of like, and so Tom is like, "Well, I want to stay here," but they're like, Oh, come on. I mean, Huck doesn't really have parents. I mean, his dad, like, I think his mom died, and his dad is like a drunker, the town drunker, so he's shunned. But Tom has fun with him, and so Tom, like, his dad doesn't really care for him, for Huck. So they're having fun, and one night, Huck and I think it's in the mid afternoon, almost evening. Huck and Joe go swimming, and Tom like swims down river, and he creeps in his aunt's backyard, and so he's listening to their conversation. He opens the door and he slips in, and they're like being so sad. They're like, uh, Joe's mom is over and Aunt Polly, and they're like, oh, we lost these boys, like, it's so sad. Everybody's really sad. And Sid was like, I hope he's in a better place. And Tom was right there. He was like literally watching them. He's like, oh, okay. So he creeps back out, swims to the island, and then since they were looking for the bodies, they decided the people in the village of well, yeah, it was like a small village, small town. They thought that they had drowned and they couldn't find the bodies, so they had an artist like draw pictures of them, and then they were gonna still like bury coffins. But Tom, Huck, and Joe marched up and attended their own funeral, and everybody was like, "They're alive." So it's pretty funny, but it's a classic scene of the book. It's honestly one of my favorite scenes. Um, and also in this book, it shows how Tom grows up from doing that to here, to here, to here, to here. Now, Tom and Becky is kind of like the girl he kind of likes, and they have like a small relationship. Sometimes in parts of the book, they fight like an old married couple. Like they're like, no, no, no. It's pretty funny. And other times, they're just like good friends. Like one time where so Tom he purposely spills this ink on the spelling book, and he gets whipped for that. But earlier Becky wanted to see their teacher's doctor, like, medical book, because their teacher wanted to become a medical doctor, but he couldn't, so he was just a schoolmaster, and he had this medical book that sometimes he had this like kind of like safe back then, and Becky saw that the key was in, so she came in before everybody else was in there. Tom was watching her, and Tom scared her when she opened it, and she ripped the page. So after she turned the key, because the key was in the safe, she turned it, opened the book, and was like, "Wow!" And then he scared her, and she ripped the page, and she quickly put it back and locked it. She started crying. And so when the doctor figures it out, he already like had belted Tom for back then they did that. Today that's like terrible. Excuse me. So after the schoolmaster had belted Tom for I think I said doctor earlier. I meant schoolmaster. After the schoolmaster had belted Tom for what he after for purposely spilling ink on the spelling book, he found that his medical book was ripped. So he's like, "Who did this? This is a nice book." And Tom, this is one of the parts where he's growing up. He says, "I did it," and he really didn't do it. And Becky was like, "Wow." And he belted Tom for it. So even though it was Becky, he did it. So he was trying to be like a good friend. I mean, of course, he still has mischievous, but that's a big part of him growing up, like becoming from just a boy to like a man. Of course, it doesn't show him in a man. It's like him being mischievous and stuff, but still does. And another big part is when Huck and Tom go and they're going to look for treasure because there's like, we want cash. Let's go look for treasure. They go to this old house. They find that Injun Joe and like two other guys with Injun Joe have found treasure there. So they hide, and after they pull the treasure out, they like walk. And Huck and Tom are always looking for them at night, and they're like, "Where did they put the treasure?" So Becky invites Tom and all of her other friends to a picnic, kind of in the cave. They have a picnic in the cave at night, so they take a steamboat over to the cave, and Tom's with Becky, and they're having fun over there, and Huck's just watching for them, and he's worried. And at one point, he sees that the widow Douglas's house. Her husband was really rich, and then he died, so she has like this big mansion. He finds out that Injun Joe was gonna like kill the widow Douglas because he wanted revenge because her husband had imprisoned him and stuff. So he tells like these, I think it wasn't the sheriff, he tells like the local townspeople, kind of, or he tells like this, yeah, and they grab their guns and they start shooting at them, and but they miss, and the Injun Joe and this other guy get away. So back at the cave, Tom and Becky get separated from the group, and they get lost for 3 days and 3 nights, and they're eating like this cake off of what they call their wedding cake, because Tom and Becky had a strong relationship. So they're eating this cake, and finally, after 3 days and 3 nights, I think it was, or maybe it was like 2 nights and 3 days or something. I'm pretty sure it was 3 days. After that, Tom goes and he finds a way out of the cave. He like grabs like a few. He finds a way out of the cave, and after that, everybody's like, "Wow, they're alive and stuff," and everybody's super happy. Meanwhile, Huck is super sick and ill. Widow Douglas is tending to him since they had doctors sent down to the cave to try to look for them and stuff, because the rest of the group, Tom and Becky, got separated from the group. The rest of the group went back after their picnic, and they were still there. So Huck was looking for the treasure, but then he kind of like got ill. So then after the cave, Tom and Huck go back to search for the treasure. But before that, sorry, I skipped a little. Before that, Injun Joe was in the cave with Tom and Becky, and they're like, "Oh no!" So like, they were super scared. And then when they find a way out, the Becky's dad, Judge Thatcher, he doesn't know Injun Joe's in the cave, and he puts this big barn door with metal locks on it, and he locks it, and he has the key. And then when he told Tom Sawyer that, Tom's like, his face goes white. He's like, "Oh no!" And he's like, "What is it?" He's like, "Injun Joe's in that cave." So they send like men with guns, and they send like the whole town goes basically down there. They unlock the door, and Injun Joe's dead because he tried to escape with the knife, but he's dead. So later, Tom and Huck look for the treasure, and they do find it. $12,000, which today is a lot of money, but back then it would probably be worth like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands today, or probably even, no, probably like millions back, like in today's money, or something like that. Either millions or hundreds of thousands because of just the ratio. So they find $12,000 of what the Injun Joe took from the old haunted house. They actually watched him do it. So they find their secret cave where Injun Joe, and no, of course, no one's there. Injun Joe died, but they found like their armory, like there's a few guns and the money. So Tom was talking about being a robber. He was like, "We'll use this stuff to be robbers," and so that's kind of like. But Huck was like, "Why don't we just be pirates?" Tom's like, "Well, we can get more money out of this," but they were just like talking about that. So after that, they go back and they cash in kind of like their money. At first, they were going to hide it and then bury it, divide it into two, but then they kind of like divide it in half so that each boy gets $6,000. And Widow Douglas, she kind of like takes Huck in and dresses him in her servant's clothes and feed him, since she's really wealthy. And because they knew that the boys would spend all their money instantly, they get $1.50 per week. And back then, you could like be clothed, you could be fed, and that was like the boys' salary. So they gave them $1.50 each week, and of course, they didn't spend any other money, like because their Judge Thatcher had protected Tom's money, and he gave him $1.50 each week. I mean, he didn't spend his money. He didn't spend Tom's money, but he just like protected. And Widow Douglas protected Huck's money, and they were each given $1.50 a week, which is like whoa. And they were, and later in the book they said that every haunted house was like dug up by men and boys because they wanted to find wealth and stuff. But at the very end, it's just the story concludes because Mark Twain's like this story is like soon can be about a man, not a boy. So then it ends. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. On this book review on Tom Sawyer. I hope you found this helpful for like school or something. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of the video, and share this video with your friends. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the History of Everything. I know I haven't posted in a while, but now I'm posting. Today I'm going to be giving you a book review. And today's book review is The Adventures of Mark Twain. Why do I always say that?